Ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Republican Congressman from California, Devin Nunes, joins us from the World Ag Expo in California this morning. Congressman Nunes was one of the first to cast doubt on the Russian collusion narrative. He has been working 2 years to uncover and expose it. He recently penned an op-ed in the Washington Examiner titled "The Russian Collusion Hoax Meets an Unbelievable End." And Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Great to be with you again.
Look, this is the first time you and I are talking on this program. I spoke with you last week, I know, on Mornings with Maria on the Fox Business Network. But this is the first time we're talking after the conclusion of the no collusion from the special counsel and from the AG. Congratulations. You ought to be taking a victory lap here, Congressman. You've been trying to expose all of this for the last 2 years, coming on this program every several weeks to talk about it. How you doing after this?
I'm doing well, and I just want to thank you also for your show, because you're one of the few shows that actually let members of Congress and others come on and actually get into the meat of the details. So I would say that your investigative journalism has been great on this, Maria, and there's still more work to do. And, you know, there's no really time for victory laps because, you know, people have to be held accountable for this nonsense.
That's absolutely right. And that's what our viewers want to know. Where is the accountability? You wrote this op-ed in the Washington Examiner, "The Russian Collusion Hoax Meets Unbelievable End," where you really laid out exactly how this started and how the Clinton campaign paid for a dirty dossier, which was then penetrated throughout our government, throughout the media, to keep this narrative alive and put a cloud under a duly elected president for 2 years.
Yeah, and I would also say this is kind of a strange situation where you have McCarthyism, like new McCarthyism, that merged with Watergate wannabes. So you had unbelievable leaks that occurred across all levels of our government. You had all sorts of reporters. 90% of the press essentially was in on this. It started by dirtying up a presidential candidate, and then it went on to dirtying up a president. And you had a bunch of, I think, people within FBI, DOJ, we don't know exactly where, but they're like want to be the next Deep Throat, the person who's leaking classified information for the betterment of all society. But in this case, it just got completely out of hand, and we've had unbelievable disclosures of classified information. And this is why we've been working so hard for 2.5 years, waiting for a real Attorney General, which we have now, an Attorney General Barr. A grown-up is finally in the room, and which is why we're prepared to do a lot of cleanup here.
Let's talk about that cleanup and what comes next, because we want to get into where the law was broken. You are going to come out with a list of referrals, and you told me you are ready to hand this over to the AG this upcoming week. What can you tell us about this list of referrals and about the referral of criminal conduct that you are about to release, sir?
So we've been working on this for 2.5 years, compiling information, right, as we've continued this investigation. We couldn't really send these criminal referrals over without an Attorney General in place. So we're prepared this week to notify the Attorney General that we're prepared to send those referrals over and brief him if he wishes to be briefed. We think they're pretty clear. But as of right now, this may not be all of them, but this cleans up quite a bit. We have 8 referrals that we're prepared to send over to the Attorney General this week.
All right, so you've got 8 referrals that you're going to send over to the AG this week. Go through those referrals. These are criminal referrals. 2 of them I know are about conspiracy. What can you tell us? Tell us as much as you can in terms of breaking this news this morning that you are prepared to send over 8 criminal referrals next week. What are they, Congressman?
So I would say that, first of all of these are classified or sensitive, and so because a lot of them could contain sensitive or classified information. 5 of them are what I would call straight-up referrals, so just referrals that name someone and name the specific crimes. Those crimes are lying to Congress, misleading Congress, leaking classified information. So 5 of them are those types. There are 3 that I think are more complicated. So you mentioned conspiracy. So the question on conspiracy is what, there's the conspiracy statute, and then what do they need to look at under that statute? So on the first one is FISA abuse and other matters. We believe there was a conspiracy to lie to the FISA court, mislead the FISA court by numerous individuals that all need to be investigated and looked at, and we believe the statute is the conspiracy statute. The second conspiracy one is involving manipulation of intelligence. That also could ensnarl many Americans. And so that's kind of the second one. As you know, we've had a lot of concerns with the way intelligence was used. So that would be kind of the two conspiracy recommendations, referrals that we're making. The third is what I would call a global leak referral. So there are about a dozen highly sensitive, classified information leaks that were given to only a few reporters over the last 2.5+ years. So, we don't know if there's actually been any leak investigations that have been opened, but we do believe that we've got pretty good information and a pretty good idea of who could be behind these leaks. It doesn't mean we know all the people that are behind the leaks, because when you read these, a lot of these, they're always anonymous sources, and they always say something to the effect of current and former senior officials. So we think we've got a pretty good idea of who some of the sources are behind these leaks. We don't know if the Department of Justice has been looking at these, but there's just been unprecedented things have happened, and I'll just close with this. You had conversations with the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Australia leak. You had leaks of the President Trump talking to the Mexican president leak. We all know the travesty of General Flynn. Nobody knows where those supposed transcripts came from. So those are just kind of three examples that are absolutely horrific. But there's things that are even worse that were leaked, and there's only a couple, 2 or 3 reporters involved in this, and so it wouldn't be hard to get to the bottom of. But you've got to. So we're prepared to make those 8 referrals this week. So the 2 on conspiracy, the 1 on global leaks, and then 5 that are more specific on lying, leaking, and misleading Congress.
Explain to our audience what criminal referral means, because we've been talking about this as well for 2 years, and our audience wants to know where the accountability is. We already know that there was a criminal referral to Andrew McCabe, the number 2 guy at the FBI. So where does that stand? What does that mean that he was criminally referred? He's out on a book tour. So, viewers are saying, well, okay, he was criminally referred, but he's still on his book tour. So what does that really mean for accountability?
I think it's a great question, because people get so frustrated. As I am all over, go around the United States of America and in my district, people are frustrated. They're like, why can't you do anything? People have to understand there's 3 branches of government. We're the legislative branch. We don't strap on guns and bring handcuffs out to the crime scene. All we can do is investigate. We can take information from folks. We can interview people, and as everyone knows, that's what we've been doing for 2.5 years. But we don't have the power to arrest or convict. So we have to take these criminal referrals to the Department of Justice with all the information, all the work that we've done. Ask the Department of Justice to take these up. And look, maybe the Department of Justice already has investigations open, and maybe they don't. But they are the investigative arm. Now, it gets more complicated because you have the top officials in the Department of Justice and the FBI that are likely involved in the referrals that we're going to make. So with that said, this is why it's so sensitive, why we want to give this directly to the Attorney General and let him decide how to take these referrals. Then at the same time, just because we have information and the executive branch decides to look at that information, all Americans have the right to a fair trial, and that goes to the judicial branch of our government. So I know it's frustrating, but we have 3 branches of government for a reason, and we have to work within those bounds of the Constitution.
But you are an elected official. One would think an elected official sends over criminal referrals to the Attorney General. The AG will take it seriously and perhaps launch an investigation, criminal investigation.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to ignore. Some of these are very straight up. I mean, if they're busting people, if the Mueller team was busting people for lying to the FBI, I mean, there's some pretty simple times when people lied to Congress, misled Congress, for the sole purpose of obstructing our investigation. And remember, what we were trying to get to the bottom of, that was that the Department of Justice and the FBI and the Clinton campaign were essentially taking information from Russians You know, the very thing they were looking at the Trump campaign for. So I would be surprised if they don't take this up. Some of these up that are very just cut and dry, very simple, could be prosecuted in a short amount of time.
How many people is this capturing? You've got 8 referrals. Several people lied to Congress. Several people also apparently misled the FISA court. And I want you to explain how they misled the FISA court. But first, tell us, how many people is this capturing? Can you give us any names on this list in terms of your referrals?
Well, I'm not prepared to give any names, but I think most people that have followed Russiagate for a long time, they know a lot of the names. But there's 5 that are straight up, 5 names. Then there are, when you get to the leaks, we don't know. We think there's only a few people behind these leaks, but there could be multiple people. So on the leak, the global leak referral, there could be several individuals. When you look at the conspiracy, I mean, that could get up to a dozen, 2 dozen people. So, you know, for example, we don't know all the people that are involved. Look, we know Strzok and Page, and we know their involvement because they've been interviewed. But, you know, there's other people that were above Strzok and below Strzok that have not been interviewed. So we don't know if they're involved in this conspiracy or not. But, you know, one of the things that has been great is we've had so many whistleblowers, so many people over the last 2.5 years that have come, great Americans who have come and said, look, this isn't right, and you guys have to get to the bottom of it. And it's been an unbelievable investigation that we've undertaken, but I think one that has been quite fruitful, so that we can put the United States on the road to recovery to get over this manufactured hoax.
Yeah, and manufactured is what you might call what John Brennan has been going along with for the last 2 years, calling the president treasonous. Is he on your list? I mean, John Brennan walking around with his CIA title, former director of the CIA, when he speaks, you sit up and listen, and for the last 2 years, he said the president committed treason.
Yeah, well, look, what I would say about all of these former intelligence heads is that, you know, this is just not appropriate. I think at some point Congress is going to have to look at these laws and decide, you know, do we really want our former CIA director or DNI director going out publicly, going on to television, getting huge television contracts? I don't know. Maybe we need to look at how this is set up again, because it really puts somebody in a bind if they can be out there, puts Americans in a bind if they can say, I've seen the classified information, and I can tell you there may be a crime there. It's just not right.
Congressman, you just broke news on the program that you are sending 8 criminal referrals to the AG next week. 3 of them around conspiracy, lying, leaking. Now, one of them, conspiracy to lie to the FISA court, Congressman. We had on your colleague, Jim Himes, recently, who kept pushing back, saying that there was absolutely no wrongdoing in front of the FISA court. And you say?
Well, I don't really care what they say. I mean, they've lied multiple times to the American people. All you have to do is look at their phony memos. They've had the full support of the media, 90% of the media in this country. They all have egg on their face. And so the fact of the matter remains, is justice going to be served, or is justice going to be denied? And that's why we're sending over these criminal referrals. So, you know, there's so much left. Remember, the American people have only seen the pieces that have been declassified so far that we were luckily been able to make classified and let the American people know about how the FISA court was abused. There's still more information. I've said this before. This was their insurance policy. A lot of people think the insurance policy was just the overall investigation of the Trump campaign. It's actually much more conspiratorial than that. That's left behind there. There was exculpatory information. We've talked about it on your show many times. So, you know, look, Maria, if you take what the Democrats have said throughout the last 2.5 years, there's only one thing that you can be certain of, and that is whatever they tell you is wrong or a lie, or they actually mean the opposite.
Should the Mueller report be made public, Congressman?
Well, what I've said about the Mueller, I think I was one of the first members of Congress to actually say that the Mueller report should be made public, but not just the Mueller report. Because remember, many people that are on the team, the Mueller team, are involved in a lot of these conspiracies, right? So you have the leader on the team, the deputy supposedly, and another top lawyer were both involved in the chain of custody of the Steele dossier, the Democratic Oppo Dirt. It is impossible for me to believe that those 2 lawyers, very smart lawyers, didn't know in the middle of 2016 that information was dirt coming from the Democrats. It's impossible. The other 2, you had 2 FBI agents, Strzok and Page, who were kicked off the Mueller team. So I want the underlying information because I think the indictments that were made by the Mueller team, I think some are very questionable, and I think there's pieces of them that always read like Russian spy novels. That was done on purpose to create a narrative to make the American people think, as they were indicting these people, that somehow this had to do with collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And so what do I want about the Mueller report? I don't care what's in the Mueller report. Matter of fact, I call it the Mueller dossier.
Yeah.
What I want is the information underlying the report so that we can actually look into it, because every time we peel back the onion in this case, what do we find? We find out that somehow high-level officials within the DOJ and FBI were misleading the American people and the courts.
Yeah. Well, we're going to keep watching that. We want to find out how far up the chain it goes in the Obama Department of Justice and the Obama administration. Congressman, we'll keep fighting and looking for it. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.